Everyone is talking about Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, and honestly, that makes sense. When people hear that name, they think of oil, war, missiles, and the fear that one narrow passage of water could shake the entire global economy. Every time tensions rise in the Middle East, the world looks at the northern shore of that waterway. We look at Tehran, but almost nobody asks the other question. What about the southern shore? What about Oman? Because the Strait of Hormuz is not just an Iran story. On the other side of that water is a country whose history has always been tied to the sea, to trade, to ports, and to the long route between the Persian Gulf and the wider Indian Ocean. If Iran helps explain why that strait feels dangerous today, Oman helps explain why that strait became so important in the first place. Today, we're going to look at the other guardian of the gateway. We're going to look at how a maritime empire you've probably never heard of shaped the world's most important choke point. When most people hear about the Strait of Hormuz, they picture a massive body of water. In reality, it's a bottleneck. At its narrowest point, it's only about 21 miles wide. But here's the detail that rarely makes the evening news. The strait is only one sea route connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. More than 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas exports pass through this needle's eye. If this gate closes, the lights go out in the cities thousands of miles away. People talk about the strait as if it belongs entirely to Iran. It doesn't. The international shipping lanes, the deep water highways that the massive VLCC tankers must use are located almost entirely within Oman territorial waters. Because the water on the northern Iranian side is often too shallow for these giants, the world's energy supply actually sails through Oman's backyard. Iran has the military leverage because they sit on the high ground to the north, but Oman has the legal and geographic custody of the path itself. Oman isn't just a bystander. It is the silent host of global trade, and to understand why they are so comfortable in this role, we have to go back to a time long before oil. One of the easiest mistakes people make when they think about the region is imagining desert countries. They see sand and borders, but Oman's history was never about the interior. It was about the coastline. For thousands of years, Oman was part of a larger maritime world. Its position on the southeastern edge of Arabia made it the natural middleman for trade routes linking the Gulf, India, and East Africa. While other civilizations were building walls, Omanis were building ships, the famous Totoos. They weren't just sailors. They were navigators who mastered the monsoon winds. In ancient times, they were already trading frankincense and coppers across the Indian Ocean. By the time the Middle Ages arrived, Omani ports were bustling hubs where Chinese silk met African gold. This is why the Strait of Hormuz mattered to them centuries ago. It wasn't about geopolitics back then. It was about life. If you control the entrance to the Gulf, you control the wealth of the East. But that kind of strategic value always attracts unwanted attention. In the early 16th century, a new power arrived, the Portuguese. They realized that if they could seize a few key checkpoints, Malacca, Goa, and Hormuz, they could tax the entire world's trade. In 1507, the Portuguese fleet arrived in Muscat. They leveled the city and built massive stone fortresses, Al-Jalali and Al-Mirandi, which still stands over the harbor today. For nearly 150 years, the Portuguese held the Omani coast in a colonial grip. But Oman didn't just fade away. In 1650, a local uprising did something incredible. They didn't just push the Portuguese out of Muscat, they chased them across the ocean. This was the birth of Oman as a regional superpower. By 1749, Al-Bu Said dynasty came to power, the same family that rules Oman today. Under their leadership, Oman did something no other Arab state had ever done. They built an overseas empire. They didn't just watch the Strait of Hormuz, they used it as a springboard to dominate the Indian Ocean. At its peak, in the 19th century, the Omani Empire was so vast that the Sultan saidbinsultan actually moved the capital of the entire country from Muscat to Zanzibar in East Africa. Think about that. An Arabian ruler moved his seat of power 2,500 miles south because that's where the trade was. They controlled the spice trade, the ivory trade, and tragically, the slave trade. They were a serious maritime state with a reach that stretched from the shores of modern-day Pakistan to the islands of the Indian Ocean. But empires eventually contract. By the 20th century, the rise of the British Empire and eternal shift changed Oman's role. They moved away from being an expansionist naval power and towards a new identity, the diplomat. Under the late Sultan Qaboos, who took power in 1970, Oman transformed. They didn't use their position at the Strait of Hormuz to threaten or extort. Instead, they became the Switzerland of the Middle East. They became the quiet neighbor who talks to everyone, the Americans, the Iranians, the Saudis, ensuring that the gate stays open even when the neighbors are fighting. So why is the world always watching this strait? The answer isn't just oil. It's history. It's the history of empires trying to command trade and coastal powers trying to protect it. If Iran represents the modern fear of what could happen at the Strait of Hormuz, Oman represents the reason why it has always mattered. It is an old maritime gate with a very long memory. Next time you see a headline about a crisis in the strait, look at the map again. Look past the missiles and the rhetoric, and look at the quiet guardian on the southern shores. Because without Oman's history, the story of the world's most important waterway is only half told.